Okay, morning everyone. Welcome to lecture 5. One thing I just want to remind you of is next week Monday is a public holiday, so no lecture next week Monday at all. Okay, there's no classes on Monday, it is a public holiday, so keep that in mind. So please don't expect us to find us on Blackboard on Monday. There will not be a lecture. Double check my calendar, make sure it is next week. Yeah, it is next week. That's a public holiday. Okay, so keep that in mind, please. Again, for those who are needing to, please do try sign up for your groups already. There is a link on Eve. If you have your 4 team members, fantastic, sign up. Then we don't have to worry about auto allocating. If you want to find team members, you can use Discord. There's the matching group practical chat. I see one or two students are using it already. You're welcome to try reach out to other students through that channel, as quite a lot of the students are on the Discord server. And please, ladies and gentlemen, I know some of you are getting sick of this announcement, but please change your nickname on Discord to your student number, else we will kick you from the server. It's just that so we can have an idea of who we're talking to when we are in practicals, etc. So the assistants are listed by their surnames, like myself and Mr. Van der Westhuizen. Students want to keep you as your student number, just to avoid any issues with identity and that. So we don't really know who we're talking to. We're just providing up support. Does the Google form show type of confirmation to? I can enable that if you want, but if you already signed up, within 2 weeks I'll start processing that, so don't stress. But only one person of the form must sign up, please. Not all 4 people sign up. You'll see that it requests the details of all 4 people. So don't all of you sign up for a different team or different team allocation. Just sign one person from the group, pick them, let them fill out the details on the Google form, done and dusted. And if you have any problems with practicals, there's the Google form for practical queries, just so we have a centralized approach to seeing who has problems with their practicals. As mentioned, it's a bit difficult keeping track of messages sent on Discord, emails, etc. So we don't want to miss anyone. So that's why we set up the Google form. We don't want to miss anyone's issues. So it's the easiest way we can think of to make sure we don't miss your complaints, so we can sort that out. Okay, let's start with some theory, then we'll go into some practical. Okay, so what we're doing today is, yesterday we concluded roughly the aspect of what a class is. Okay, so today I want to focus on showing you how to integrate the class into the form and then work from there. But as always, in the start of a new lecture, we introduce a bit of general knowledge. So this lecture is source control. Anyone heard of the term source control or GitHub? Okay, one person. Okay, source control is, okay, got a few of you, fantastic. It's a very important tool. It allows, as mentioned on the slide, source control is also sometimes referred to as version control or versioning. So basically happens when you develop a project, you have the project on your computer, but you also have a main copy on like a software platform like GitHub. So you have a copy of the project on GitHub. So everyone working on the same project has the same access to the same GitHub files. So every time I'm working on a project, I pull the newest files from GitHub. I then work on those files. I commit the files back to GitHub. The next person that wants to work can then pull the new files from GitHub. So source control allows us to track who's doing what, when they're doing it, when they're changing, when they're adding. Multiple developers can work on the same code base at the same time, while allowing it to be merged and combined as you go. So it's a way of sharing code between individuals, allowing people to develop code on a big project together without impacting each other, instead of just basically, the only other way would be walking around with a flash drive, and every time you make a change, go to every single person that's working on the project and give them the flash drive with your changes to the project. The problem with that is you may change what they've done already. So GitHub is a way of managing the merging of different practicals into one. Git and GitHub are the same. Git and GitHub are the same thing, if I remember correctly. I'll stand to be corrected, but GitHub is part of Git. Yeah, so GitHub is free, so you can actually go and commit code there and there's a lot of open projects you can go and work on as well. But it's just a way of managing code. The example you actually can see in the slides is the one aspect of it, which is branching. Where's my, no, I want that. So when you're developing, you have a main line of code and then branches. So here someone's basically tried something new, experimented, it got it working, and then taken that new section of code and added it back to the main branch. So it allows you to actually like take the code in a different direction, experiment with it without impacting the original code. If it's a valid and working solution and doesn't break the project, you can almost re-pull it back into the project. So it's very friendly in there. And it is something by end of third year you expect it to actually know. In third year, you'll be using GitHub. It is something that you must know. You must know source control before you leave the university. It's a standard practice in industry that you use source control. Just to make life easier for developing, especially in big repos. Okay, Mr. Van der Westhuizen's given the comment on Git. Git is a version control system that lets you manage and keep track of someone's code history. GitHub is a cloud-based hosting service that lets you manage Git repositories. Just for those listening into the recording, you can't see the chat, so I've just read that section out. Okay, so there is a slight difference between the two. This is more of a version control, and this is versioning control. And GitHub is almost a website you can go to and actually download and manage your Git repositories. Okay, or not all your general knowledge is going to be about people. It's also going to be about tools and aspects you'll be involved with. So working with classes, we're going to go now switch to VB Code, and we'll come back to the lecture. So I've gone and I hope that's visible. We have our vehicle class. So we have our tires name. I added tank to it. I've done the constructor, the property methods, the VIN number, the read-only. I've done two read-only, one for VIN, one for tank. I've done remote control, sensor, full tank, and I've got a subroutine drive. Okay. Everyone okay with what the read-only, write-only is? Those aspects of it. Any questions about constructors? Everyone comfortable with those aspects? What a constructor is used for, and when, or how, not how to use it, I'll show you now, but what it's used for at least. Okay, and just tying back into something we said yesterday, remember, a vehicle has a VIN number that when it's made or built, it's used. So when we construct the vehicle, the VIN number is automatically assigned and the VIN number is set. Because remember, a VIN number is a read-only. So once the constructors run, the VIN number is set, we can't change it. What is it used for? It is used for building the object. A constructor is used to build the object, to actually build it and keep it in memory. Okay, why do we use read only? Get is returning. Okay, so get will return a value, set will set a value. So inside every property method, you have a getter and a get and a set on a standard property method. But for your read and write onlys, the read only will only have a get, the write only will only have a set, because only can do that. Can you have two or more constructors in the same class? Yes, you can. This is something known as constructor overloading. We did cover it. I can have a blank one here as nothing. You go, but I would at least do the VIN number as string. So if nothing else, if we know nothing else, we at least know the VIN number because every vehicle has to have a VIN number. And in this case, I'm going through the instance variable because again, the property method is only read only. So I can't actually use the property method in the constructor like I'm doing with tires. Tires, I'm using the property method. It can be randomly assigned, but right now I'm not going to do it. The question in chat is a VIN number is the VIN number going to be randomly assigned? Generally, it has to be unique. It can't just be random. It has to be a unique number. There's other ways to handle that. We'll look at them later. But for now, we're just going to set the VIN number. So we've got our basic form set up. Okay. So I know there's nothing in Drive. I don't really know what Drive would do. I'm just going to go to the form. I'm missing the option statements. Already I have a vehicle as a vehicle, so I have my future object as vehicle. I'm invoking the constructor, but you notice it's underlining in red. Why is it underlining in red? Any guesses? No parameters, correct. Okay. Because remember, we have two constructors. One that accepts a VIN number, a number of tires, and a name of the car, and another one that accepts just a VIN number. But we have no constructor that accepts nothing. So we must at least do something along the terms of VIN as string equals input box. Please enter the VIN number. And then I go VIN there. Now I can create the object. Now I can run instantiation and create the object. Okay, because remember, we have to have the VIN number in order to create this type of object. I'm not going to work with a single variable. I'm going to work with an array rather, as that's the most common way you guys are going to be working with objects. So of course, it's not going to give me complaints because it doesn't know which one. So let's start off with getting a private in vehicles as integer. Is cnt we redim my vehicle to n vehicle. Change this to my vehicles. So here, that's a tricky part. Would this be correct? Let me do this. Nothing's underlined in red, okay? So from the computer standpoint, there's no syntax error. There's no grammar error. There's no missing brackets. There's no variables that aren't being declared. But is it logically correct? Now, this is an important thing to keep in mind. You also got to check logic behind the code. Now, is the logic correct? Go in the brackets. I'm not sure about in the brackets. Okay, not sure. In this situation, let's go to the code. I instantiate. No. You guys are missing the point. In vehicles is okay. Yes, my spelling went bad. No, my spelling is always bad. Never mind. In vehicles is how many vehicles there are. Okay. So if I'm making 5 or 10 vehicles, that's how many vehicles are. So I'm redumbing the array to size 10. Then next thing I'm asking for the VIN number, and then I'm running a loop to create each object. Because remember, you can't just say my vehicle equals new vehicle. Remember, you have an array, so you have to instantiate each object independently. Now, the problem is, what I was trying to point out, would every vehicle have the same VIN number? Okay. In this situation, yes, every vehicle will have the same VIN number, which is a problem. So this actually has to be, yeah, to make sure that every time I create a new vehicle, I also uh, give it a new VIN number. This is not the most elegant way or neatest way of doing this. I will show you a better way later on, but I need you to get the idea of what I'm doing. For every object I'm making, I'm creating a VIN number. Okay, so there are better ways to do this. I'll show you later on better ways, but for now, the idea is with an array of objects, we have to instantiate the array the same way. And then from there, we need to go and create each object. But in order to create each object, we also need a VIN number. And how we get the VIN number is also important because we can't have the same VIN number for every single vehicle. So in this case, we're also getting a VIN number from the user every time we make an object. Does that make sense? Okay. Or have I lost half of you guys? Please say it again. Okay. So I'll go through it again. Here, do we have a single vehicle? Are we working with single vehicles in the form? Or are we working with an array of vehicles? Array. Okay. So we have an array of vehicles we are working with. So we get the same as we did last semester. We get how many vehicles we have and we read them. Okay. That has to be done. But now with objects, we have to instantiate each object. And in this case, do we have a parameterless constructor? No. Okay. We don't have a parameterless constructor. So we need to give it information to work. The one piece of information we needed to give it is the VIN number. So we asked the user for the VIN number. This is not how you would do it in a manufacturing plant with vehicles. No, you wouldn't have a person sitting there just deciding VIN numbers. You would have a system generating VIN numbers for you. But you guys don't know how to do that yet. We'll go, if we have time in the semester, maybe we'll show you something like that. But now you don't really have a system in place that will allow you to generate VIN numbers as you need. So right now we're going to ask the user. So that's what's happening here. We ask the user what's the VIN number. Once we know the VIN number, we create the object 1. Then we create object 2, then 3, then 4, then 5. As we move forward, every vehicle gets a new VIN number, and we create our objects. Does that explain for the person who asked me to repeat it? Does it make more sense now? And deathly silence. Yes, okay, good. Okay, have we got currently with our vehicle, does it have any information besides the VIN number? No, okay. So it's basically it's an empty object. It has no information. So we need to go and get the information. So I'm not, okay, let me do this properly, else I'm gonna have students making the same mistake or repeating what I do and then causing problems later. btn read in, read in. Only read in, we got to go for. I just want to check, is everyone okay? I'm not sure if we ever explain what the hell I type when I do the for loop. If you guys, I don't know if you guys have picked up, I'm going for v as integer. Is everyone comfortable with what I'm actually doing there? Okay, good. The reason I do it is because in other languages you do it there as well. Let me give you an example. C# would look like this. For int I equals 0, I less than 5, I plus plus. So a C# for loop would look like that. Declare the variable int, I set it to 0, it will run until it's less than 5 and increases 1 every time. Also C++, yeah, no. C# is like a combination of a whole bunch of languages mashed together. It's a fantastic language. But that's a C#. But this again is one of the reasons we picked VB as a basic language to start off with teaching, is it's easier to understand that if compared to that. This is easier to read and see what it's doing, because if I say that to a normal person, he's speaking gibberish. Okay, this is also still a bit gibberish, but at least gives an idea. You can leave out the next V. It's when you have multiple V's or multiple loops, you have a V. But we diverge. Let's get back to the work. My vehicle V dot name equals input box. I'm not going to do every single one. I'm just want to show you how to work with this. Please enter the name of vehicle. Okay. Then you could display it to the grid if you have that. Here you would display to grid or to text box, depending on what you're doing, but you would display, and actually they may not just type that. Let me show you how it works. Grid. Show you display it. I know for some of you you've seen it already in the tutorials, but practice this. So I just need to quickly go private sub PRR C as integer. We always use the UJ grid. We don't really use anything else. There's no real need for anything else. In later on in when you move on to other informatics, you can use the other grids. That's up to you. But for informatics 1, we use the UJ grid, as it actually was designed for informatics 1. Equals T. Okay, so there's our place results. I'm not going to go and set up the grid. I'm just showing you the rough code of outputting, displaying, etc. So when I want to output now, I would go page results, say row vehicle column 1, and I want to display the name. So we invoke the property method we invoke the property method to display. Yeah, the UJ grid was made by, not UJ, the Academy. The UJ grid was made by the Academy. That's why you have to add it manually to VB. Okay, so everyone can how to input information into the class. You'd use the property methods. How to display, again, you'd use the property methods. I'm not going to do all of them, as it's the same thing repetitive. I'd ask for the tires, I could work with the sensors. Let me work with the sensors as that's a double, as that's an array as well. So it's, ooh, that's actually something we missed. How do we resize the array? Yeah, I know redim, but how and where? You can't really use a property method. Okay, now we're going to get a whole bunch of things. We can't really use the property method because the property method only returns one value. Okay, you can use the constructor. I see someone mentioned it, constructor. So here we also have size as integer. Also would require size as integer. And you would redim. I'm going wait a sensor. Size. You could actually use a subroutine as well, just depending, because you might not know the sensors when you're constructing, but I'm going to do it for now like this. We'd also need to know dim sensors as integer, but it's the end sensors. Ladies and gentlemen, by now you guys know how to specify the rows and columns. I'm not too phased on that. Right now I'm focusing on how to work with the form and with the class and the objects. Okay? So by now you're all comfortable with the grid, I'm assuming. So I'm focusing more on how to function with the class and the objects inside the form. So here you'd also go and pass in sensors. Okay. You could ask this outside the for loop if you had a different number of sensors for each vehicle, or you could ask it here and all the vehicles have the same number of sensors. Dim because I'm getting a variable, not redim. Remember, I'm passing the size of the number of sensors into the constructor, which then redims. So inside the constructor, I'm resizing the arrays. There is another way to do it. Public sub resize array size as integer. And when the question is, I know I'm redim. Okay, I'll explain what there's two constructors now. Okay, Leisure, when I'm building the vehicle, would I automatically know how many sensors they're going to be? Okay, sometimes you would, depends on the vehicle. Okay, so sometimes you would know the size, and sometimes you wouldn't know the size. So your multiple constructors there serve to allow you to process information you know while working. So now let's see, if I only know the VIN number when I create the object, I use this constructor. If I know the VIN number and the sensors, I use this constructor. If I know the VIN number, the number of tires, the name of the car, and the size of the number of sensors, I use this constructor. So the constructor allows us to handle the different amount of information we're getting. So depending on the situation we in hand, we would alternate between constructors. We'll leave practical 3 discussion till the end. I want to first get through this. Okay, what is the difference between the 2 constructors in this case? In this case, this constructor, if I know the VIN number, the tires, the name of the car, and the size of the array, I'd use this constructor. If I only know the VIN number and this number of sensors, I would use this one. If I only know the VIN number, I would use this one. So depending on the amount of information I have while I'm building the object, I would then use the different constructors. Like building a house off a blueprint. You have the blueprint, but do you know exactly where things are going to go in the house? Does the person building the house know exactly where things are going to go? Okay. But what if the person that you're building the house for says, I would like to have a fireplace in this corner? So would that change the constructor's the builder's behavior if they want a fireplace in the Pacific corner? Yes. Okay. That's what's happening here. If we know something about the object we're creating, we use it. If we don't know certain information, we have alternative constructors to allow for that, to handle the different amount of information coming in. So if the person is saying, no, I want the built-in cupboards on this side of the room, I want my cupboards on this side of the room, not that side of the room. Those are things you can pass through the parameters to adjust the specific object, to change the specific object. Because remember, once you've built it, you can't change. Sometimes you can't change it. The outer structure, at least, you can't change. So you got to be the different constructors allow us to handle different conditions when building the object. The conditions to build with this constructor is we know the VIN, the type. I'll get to you now. This is if you have the VIN and the size only. Yes, we have a hand up.
Morning, sir.
Morning.
So, sir, is it really necessary to have all the constructors instead of just having one and putting everything in it?
Depends on the type of practical you're trying to do and the problem you're trying to address. My goal right now isn't to say you must have all of them. I'm trying to show you that you can have them. It's to allow you to guys realize that there's more than you can have more than one constructor. This is known as constructor overloading because every constructor has a different set of parameters. We'll talk about method overloading later on as well. Constructor overloading and method overloading are very similar. It's based on the parameters that are being passed through. We invoke different build styles. So the build style for each of these are slightly different, and you don't have to have all of them. You could just have one. It just depends on what you're trying to do. It more depends on the problem and how you're trying to attempt to solve the problem. There's no fixed thing here. But if you're unless in the documentation or your practical says you must have this constructor and this constructor and this constructor, then it's a different story. My opinion, having more than one constructor is generally a good idea because then you can alternate between the two. They can't have similar parameters. Ooh, good. Have similar parameters. This is a question from yesterday. Why isn't tires going through underscore tires? Because in tires I have a validation. So I'm validating the tires. So I'm using the property method instead of just the instance variable. So I can make sure that the value of number of tires is a valid number, not a negative number. So that is important. We'll speak about if constructors have similar parameters just now. I just have a question here. What if you had more than one object? How would you use a constructor? The same way I'm doing it here. Here I have more than one object. I'm using the same constructor. Okay. So I could also, what I have also done now is given me the ability to invoke a property method for V that says resize array, and I can pass sensors through this one. You could do this later on as well. You could do this inside the input. No, each object won't have its own constructor. They'll share constructors, or they'll use these constructors. Remember, these are the constructors to build the objects. So, and one object may be built with this constructor, another object may be built with this constructor, but at the end of the day, it's the same object that's being built. It just has different qualities added already. Okay, then I'd go and say for s as integer equals 1 to n. Oh, this is where it's going to cause a problem. I need this to be a global. Okay. And for the person asked about the next v, the next s, this is when you use the next v, next s. Here, since we have two next to each other, the next s and the next v, we know which next belongs to which for loop. So here you would just simply go and say sensors s equals cdbl input box. I'm going over time in a few seconds. I might be out of time. And we then say sensors. And then we display it similarly. If you want to invoke a subroutine or function, remember, ladies and gentlemen, it's also the name of your object, dot, and then if you look here, let me just magnify. I don't know how this comes across in streaming. But if I go dot, you'll see the name of property methods. You'll also see a resize array method. You'd see full tank and you have drive. So I can invoke drive, and now the object will drive. I don't know what drive does, but it'll invoke that functionality to drive. Okay, so that's how you'd invoke a function from the class. The object will call the function. The object is calling the function. Remember this. Here we have objects. We don't have classes. These are all objects. You guys okay with that point? Okay. So like in the previous lectures up until now, the last two lectures were, okay, here's parameters, here's constructors, here's property methods. Here are methods that are usable. Today, I'm now going through how to use that specific class to create an array of objects. How we instantiate. Remember, if you don't instantiate, you're going to get a null reference exception, so be very careful of that. We need to instantiate. And then we read in and display. This part will look very similar to what you did last semester with the record structures. The only difference is this variable has methods as well. It can do things. So keep that in mind. It can do functions or support functionality of the object. So the object can drive, the object can fill up tank, the object can park, the object can stop. It has functionality that goes with the object. And invoking them is simply dot call the method, dot call the function. Everyone okay with that? Okay. Any questions about what I've done here? Because this is the basic premise of working with objects in your form. The most important thing that you must take away is this, the constructor. I'll put this into a PDF format and upload it, yes. But Lejan, please, some of the stuff I've done here is actually, I wouldn't do it when I'm developing a proper project. I wouldn't do this resize array here. I would do another approach. Right now, I'm just not showing you the wrong way. There's a better way to do it. I would like to do it later on, though. My main goal was just to show you how to work with the object in the form. But I noticed that I didn't resize the array, and I needed a facility to resize the array. So there is other ways of doing this. Again, I'm teaching you tools to put into your toolbox. All the main goal of this here is to add to your toolbox of programming knowledge, so you know how to do certain things. This is what we're focusing on. Now I've got 2 minutes left. I just want to briefly touch on what I'm going to discuss next week, Tuesday, which is a helper method or utility method. So everyone should recognize this picture, right? Or most of you should recognize it. I'm not sure what that symbol means. Yes, okay. But is that really what is going end game? Is that really what's going on? Is that the actual thing that's happening? Or is that the real one? Okay, that, yes, is what we see on a lovely screen. But in reality, there's a lot of things going on that we don't see. So utility methods are methods and subroutines and functions that you don't really see, but help you get to the end result, because this help the screen crew go from this to this. Okay. So a utility method are private functions within, or private subroutines within our class. And they support the end result. We don't see them like in the movie. We don't see this guy, the actor, sitting there and acting out. We see the Hulk. Okay. So we don't see what's going on behind the scenes. There are extra things happening. Okay, and that's the point of utility methods. They provide extra support behind. Okay. Now you're going off topic. They provide support to enable the end result to work better, to look better, and to look cleaner. Okay, because I'm sure you guys wouldn't want to watch the movie like this. Okay, so utility methods provide some support to help the class function a bit better without being seen. Spoiler alert, yeah. Little Hulk, yes. And then we'll also discuss shared, what is shared, we'll discuss next week. Okay, so I'll go again on Monday, I'll start with utility methods, or not Monday, sorry, Monday is a public holiday and we all need a public holiday. So on Wednesday, I will start with utility methods and I will then go through shared. This is a utility method. Utility methods are private. You don't get to see them. This is the point. You don't get to see how this is done in real life. You only get the end result. 3D, there's a course at Honors that does 3D graphics, or 3D does graphics. Okay, we over time, ladies and gentlemen. I think we are out of time for this morning. Let's double check. I'm not, yeah. Any other questions, post them on Discord or on YouTube for commenting, but that's it for today's lecture, ladies and gentlemen. We'll see you at 1 o'clock for the tutorial. We are covering a new topic in the tutorial, data structures. So please, if you can, do attend. I'll watch the video later on data structures. And then we'll go into a Q&A session after the data structures if you have questions. But that's it for the announcement for today's lecture. I'm going to end the recording now.